Good afternoon. It was a really exciting session for me. I think it's really a fantastic topic of applying sustainability in mining industry. But we're going to move a bit to a slightly different topic, but something that's extremely important, which is future of work. It's a very topical topic, especially with what's happening in pandemic. And I'm really pleased to announce that we are having Ekkehard Ernst with us today to give us his views. He's a president and founder of Geneva Macro Labs, and this is really a platform to address, develop, and implement solutions to address global challenges and risk in this sector. With his team, he's brought together the international thought leaders and practitioners to promote and advance the United Nations Sustainable Development Agenda. His focus really lies on identifying, scaling, and actionable solutions in civil sector organization, private actions, and public regulators for maximum efficiency. Ekkehard is really well known in his field. His work is widely published in both policy reports and academic studies. His most recent work, which I would recommend you to have a look in on LinkedIn, discusses different policy options to address the social economic crisis from COVID-19. He's also researched into the implication of artificial intelligence, robots, blockchain applications, and future of job, inequality, and transitional to sustainable society. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Ekkehard to join the platform and give us the view. Ekkehard, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me, and great to be with you this afternoon. It's a pleasure to share my views here with you on some of the future of work related issues and some of the solutions that we might be able to implement together with obviously you and your partners here in this conference today and tomorrow. Let me share my screen and share some of the thoughts I wanted to bring to the floor today. Now I can to see where. Sorry, I thought that's easier than. Oh, I can't see it.
Yeah.
I can see my file here now on the screen. One second, here we go. Sorry about this. So what I wanted to share with you today is some ideas of developing impact investment to make the future of work sustainable. As Suni announced, I'm co-founder and president of Geneva Macro Labs. We are a platform in Geneva on developing, co-designing impact investment ideas on a broad range of topics. And one of these topics are quite naturally, not only because of the current crisis, but because of longer trends related to future of work. But before I go into the matter of the heart of the matter, let me ask you this question. And this seems to be maybe a bit far-fetched for some of you, but I wanted to ask you this question here. What do the three groups or the three pictures I show you have in common? The first one is this one on migrants. This is actually a picture taken outside my home in Geneva. You might remember, for those of you reading the Swiss press, that there was quite a migrant crisis earlier this year in relation with the COVID crisis. So what the first picture is these migrants. The second picture are these graduates. So this is just a random picture of some graduates. I guess all of you have experienced somehow the ceremony of getting your degree at some point in your life and can relate to this. And the last point is what are these two groups have in common with robots? So what do they have in common? Well, more interesting, what they do have in common is they all need somehow a certificate. The migrants is quite obvious. They need a passport. They need some kind of certification. And actually, the big problems for some of these migrants in Geneva earlier this year was they didn't have all the required documentation for being able to access some of social services. For students, it's very obvious as well. They need a degree, whether it's from Harvard or from any other university, or they need a vocational training certificate, any certificate that would allow them to enter the labor market. And for robots, well, you have safety passports, safety requirements that they need to fulfill. So somehow they all need some form of certification that would allow them to take part in our daily lives, whether actively as you and me, or passively as a robot, as a machine. Now, the question is, what does it have to do with the future of work, and especially what does it have to with impact investment? And my argument today, and I'll show you a bit in a minute, is actually quite a bit. There's quite a lot of overlap with these three, these common element of certification, with how we can actually deal with the future of work, and how we can we shape the future of work in such a way that it is sustainable. And most importantly, not only that we can shape the future of work that it becomes sustainable, but also that we as private actors in this field can actually contribute actively to shape the future of work through certification schemes. Now, let me just step back 1 second and talk to you about things that a lot of you already obviously are aware of, but maybe just to kind of summarize some of the key points in terms of the changes that we are facing. Now, COVID is only one example, and it's maybe the most drastic one, but it's certainly not the only factor, the only force that is shaping the daily working life. So we know obviously have all been confined to home offices, changes in the way we are dealing with each other, including in this conference. Obviously now we can't meet each other anymore physically. We have most of the time to confine ourselves to virtual spaces, and that will certainly changes the way we interact and we innovate and we kind of collaborate in the future. But this is not new, as you might recall. The whole discussion about flex work, about gig work, about platform work has been around for the last at least 10 years. And we know that this is just an extension what we're experiencing now with respect to what we have seen in the last few years. The second point, again, something that is not specific to COVID, but is just accelerating, is the increase in the accelerating speed at which certain jobs are being automated. Now, the most obvious example is in retail, in the way we distribute our goods and services, but it's not the only one. We have many areas where automation is taking place, and in particular, some areas that are related directly to how we deal with our human resources in companies. So there's a lot of job churn, a lot of new jobs being created, maybe not as many as we would wish, and a lot of old jobs are being either modified or disappear completely. That immediately leads to the third point, which is careers. Career paths are becoming much more mobile, not only geographically, but also across sectors or occupations. You have much more pathways through different careers, through different occupations, through different sectors in current generation, but certainly even more so in future generation. And these careers need to be managed and need to be somehow traced. You need to be able to identify what these people have been doing over the past 10, 15, 20 years. So it's no longer possible to just simply rely on a CV maybe. And so again, the idea of bringing some kind of certification comes in. And the last point, and I think that's the most important point also from our perspective, from the perspective of Geneva Micro Labs, is what I call here managed interconnectivity, which sounds a bit pompous as a word, but what it really basically means is that we need to somehow structure a bit better and more systematically our interactions, being in such a conference, being in some other platform exchanges where we bring together and exchange our ideas. Now, I want to give you three concrete examples of what that actually means in relation with the future of work. The first one is in terms of job churn. There are lots of different initiatives, obviously, and that's not necessarily new today, but one of the key elements is how do we actually grow our employees through bringing them new skills and competences? How do we make sure that our employees actually have the possibility to go and move to new opportunities, to new sectors. And often it's not enough to just say, oh, well, I want to certify the skills, because these certification schemes, there are numerous ones, but it's important to actually coordinate and somehow manage the way these certification schemes work. So you need to have one way of scaling up these different schemes that exist right now, and make sure that somehow they can identify properly the skills and competence an employee has, and the skills and competence an employee can access through different types of services, either inside the company or outside. The second point is flexible working arrangements, whether it's through telework or through platform work, etc., is becoming more and more important. And that means that basically we have to match increasingly people with tasks. Now, matching people with tasks seems to be very simple when it comes to taxi services or retail services, but it's very complicated when it comes to very cognitive, highly specialized tasks, where it's not always easy to identify neither what the particular person brings in terms of skills and competences, nor what the different tasks actually require in terms of competences. A lot of companies trying to find now ways of identifying through a machine learning and artificial intelligence tools this type of procedures, but it's not enough to have just a multitude of these different tools. You somehow need to scale them up, and you somehow need to be able that not only the big companies, the Googles and the Amazons of this world can benefit from these tools, but your next door neighbor company, your next door neighbor startup can also benefit from it. In Switzerland, in particular, where we live a lot from small and medium-sized enterprises, a lot of these tools are way too expensive, way too complicated to implement and scale up in a network of enterprises. So again, you need some kind of certification scheme that would help us to allow these people to work together a bit better. And the last point is matching ideas with capital. And I think this is exactly where our strong points at Geneva Microlabs comes in. Here you actually have yet another problem, which is to say that we need to have some kind of certification scheme that certain ideas are actually validated by a community of experts and can be matched with appropriate capital. I mean, we talked in the previous session about impact investment, and here it's exactly what we're trying to achieve with the type of tools that I wanted to introduce you in the rest of my presentation, which is we wanted to see to what extent we can identify some certification scheme, some way of some process that helps us to not only find the right ideas, but also find the right type of capital that help us to bring these ideas to fruition and into a successful endeavor. Now, how does our approach work? And I think that's exactly where we are currently at, where we believe that future work initiatives can really benefit from our approach. The first one is bringing basically the thought leaders and practitioners in this area together. And I mentioned in particular one particular group of people here that I think are highly relevant for this endeavor, which is regulators and politicians. We often see the problem that a lot of these initiatives, these impact initiatives around future work-related issues cannot be scaled up, as I mentioned before, because of the lack of connectivity and interaction between these different players in the market. So bringing the politicians, bringing the regulators into the picture and discuss with them how to best formulate an environment in which these initiatives can grow is essential, especially in the area of making the future of making the labor market more sustainable towards a highly productive workforce. The second part is more straightforward, jointly finding technological solutions, because that is currently being done in a lot of areas. I mentioned a couple of them in terms of talent management, in terms of finding the right skills, the right competences, and identifying the right people for these skills. But what we don't have, what we need with that is we still need to identify which are the technological solutions fit the particular problems that we have. And then I think the last point again comes back to where we see our core competence in the way we are dealing with these issues, which is that we want to connect ideas to capital. We want to connect those with the ideas, with those who can actually implement them, and bring in the right amount of patient impact investment that is needed to make these startups successful and put them into practice basically in a jury type of selection process. So how have we set up? I mean, we are basically as Geneva Microlabs, as our impact lab, an association that focus specifically on a stakeholder, a multi-stakeholder partnership experience. So we want to really kind of bring in a large number of different partners, and I've shown you here a selection of the partners that we currently have already in our portfolio. We obviously are always keen on expanding that, so we certainly want to reach out to people who are in this call today to see to what extent you would like to join us. But the idea is really this multi-stakeholder approach as one way of bringing together the expertise, the necessary business knowledge, the financial aspect, and the regulatory environment, or the regulators that help us to actually help to implement these ideas in relation with the future of work to make them sustainable and to grow our labor markets for a successful future. Now, how can you get involved in this? There are three elements or three levels at which you can get involved. This obviously the one big challenge, or the one big area where you can get involved is as an expert. You can help us through a thought leadership, to kind of sharing your knowledge, sharing your ideas, or as an innovator with a concrete business plan, business idea to implement some of the ideas we have. We have a range of thought leaders, as I mentioned before, in our network, and there are a lot of ideas that are just waiting to be implemented by successful businesses and innovators to make sure that these can actually be implemented. As you know, not everybody who has a good idea is necessarily also a good business leader. So bringing these two sides of the market together is important. The second point is you can obviously join us as a funder. We always are looking forward for sustainable finance investors that help us to support these business ideas. And as a last point possibility for us is obviously if you want to join us in a long-term partnership and through a sponsorship, sponsoring membership, that would be obviously highly appreciated, so that we can together develop some of the ideas that are out there in the market in our community. Let me conclude.
Ekkehard,
this is the last slide. This is the last slide. Let me conclude by just telling you how you can get in touch with us. Here are some links here, and I'm really looking forward to some of the questions that you might have for me or for us. And obviously, you feel free to kind of connect with us even after this talk. Thank you very much.
Ekkehard, that was really thought-provoking, and I would really encourage all of you to look at some of the website. You know, I'm associated with this organization. They do really a good work. But unfortunately, we don't have time for questions. We are live on television and in different areas, and we would really have to keep the time. But I'm really excited about the next upcoming session because it touches my heart. It's a debate with the youth, with His Excellency Prince Michael of Liechtenstein, which is moderated by my colleague, Dennis Erkus. And I think this is going to be very engaging and informative for all of you. So stay with us, give us 30 seconds for us to get organized, and we shall be with you shortly. Thank you very much.